Hello, everybody. This is Charlene Burke with Grow Because You Know. That's www.growbecauseyouknow.com. Welcome to Morning Mindset Cafe, where we read just a few pages of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and then get into a discussion about what we've read, be it exactly what we read out of the book or something close to it, our own experiences. To this point, it has been outstanding experience for me, and I'm getting good feedback from those who have listened and those who are participating that they too are getting just as much out of this as I do. So I want to thank everybody who is here. Before we get started, today, according to the PDF that I'm reading from, I'm going on pages 221 to 226, where Napoleon Hill is talking about the invisible counselors. Where we left off, he had, for context purposes, he had talked about building character through autosuggestion and had a list of people who had particular characteristics that he wanted for himself. So he wrote them all out and actually said to each one, I desire to acquire this particular characteristic. So therefore, at the top of 221, we're talking about having read all of that out loud every night. This is what Napoleon Hill says. My method of addressing the members of the imaginary cabinet would vary according to the traits of character in which I was, for the moment, most interested in acquiring. I studied the records of their lives with painstaking care. After some months of this nightly procedure, I was astounded by the discovery that these imaginary figures became apparently real. Each of these 9 men developed individual characteristics which surprised me. For example, Lincoln developed the habit of always being late, then walking around in solemn parade. When he came, he walked very slowly with his hands clasped behind him, and once in a while he would stop as he passed and rest his hand momentarily upon my shoulder. He always wore an expression of seriousness upon his face. Rarely did I see him smile. The cares of a sundered nation made him grave. That was not true of the others. Burbank and Payne often indulged in witty repartee, which seemed at times to shock the other members of the cabinet. One night, Payne suggested that I prepare a lecture on the age of reason and deliver it from the pulpit of a church which I formerly attended. Many around the table laughed heartily at the suggestion. Not Napoleon. He drew his mouth down at the corners and groaned so loudly all turned and looked at him with amazement. To him the church was but a pawn of the state, not to be reformed, but to be used as a convenient inciter to mass activity by the people. On one occasion, Burbank was late. When he came, he was excited with enthusiasm and explained he had been late because of an experiment he was making, through which he hoped to be able to grow apples on any sort of tree. Payne chided him by reminding him that it was an apple which started all the trouble between man and woman. Darwin chuckled heartily as he suggested that Payne should watch out for his little serpents when he went into the forest to gather apples, as they had the habit of growing into big snakes. Emerson observed, no serpents, no apples. Napoleon remarked, no apples, no state. Lincoln developed the habit of always being the last one to leave the table after each meeting. On one occasion, he leaned across the end of the table, his arms folded, and remained in that position for many minutes. I made no attempt to disturb him. Finally, he lifted his head slowly, got up, and walked to the door. Then turned around, came back, and laid his hand on my shoulder and said, my boy, you will need much courage if you remain steadfast in carrying out your purpose in life. But remember, when difficulties overtake you, the common people have common sense. Adversity will develop it. One evening, Edison arrived ahead of all the others. He walked over, seated himself at my left, where Emerson was accustomed to sit, and said, you are destined to witness the discovery of the secret of life. When the time comes, you will observe that life consists of great swarms of energy or entities, such as intelligent as human beings think themselves to be. These units of life group together like hives of bees and remain together until they disintegrate through lack of harmony. These units have differences of opinion, the same as human beings, and often fight amongst themselves. These meetings which you are conducting will be very helpful to you. They will bring to your rescue some of the same units of life which serve the members of your cabinet during their lives. These units are eternal. They never die. Your own thoughts and desires serve as the magnet which attracts units of life from the great ocean of life out there. Only the friendly units are attracted, the ones which harmonize with the nature of your desires. The other members of the cabinet began to enter the room. Edison got up, slowly walked around to his own seat. Edison was still living when this happened. It impressed me so greatly that I went to see him and told him about the experience. He smiled broadly and said, "Your dream was more a reality than you may imagine it to have been." He added no further explanation to his statement. These meetings became so realistic that I became fearful of their consequences and discontinued them for several months. The experiences were so uncanny, I was afraid if I continued them, I would lose sight of the fact that the meetings were purely experiences of my imagination. Some 6 months after I had discontinued the practice, I was awakened one night, or thought I was, when I saw Lincoln standing at my bedside. He said, "The world will soon need your services. It is about to undergo a period of chaos, which will cause men and women to lose faith and become panic-stricken. Go ahead with your work and complete your philosophy. That is your mission in life. If you neglect it for any cause whatsoever, you will be reduced to a primal state and be compelled to retrace the cycles through which you have passed during thousands of years." I was unable to tell the following morning whether I had dreamed this or had actually been awake, and I have never since found out which it was. But I do know that the dream, if it were a dream, was so vivid in my mind the next day that I resumed my meetings the following night. At our next meeting, the members of my cabinet all filed into the room together and stood at their accustomed places at the council table, while Lincoln raised a glass and said, "Gentlemen, let us drink a toast to a friend who has returned to the fold." After that, I began to add new members to my cabinet, until now it consists of more than 50, among them Christ, St. Paul, Galileo, Copernicus, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, Homer, Voltaire, Bruno, Spinoza, Drummond, Kant, Schopenhauer, Newton, Confucius, Albert Hubbard, Brand, Ingersoll, Wilson, and William James. This is the first time that I have had the courage to mention this. Heretofore, I have remained quiet on the subject because I knew, from my own attitude in connection with such matters, that I would be misunderstood if I described my unusual experience. I have been emboldened now to reduce my experience to the printed page because I am now less concerned about what they say than I was in the years that have passed. One of the blessings of maturity is that it sometimes brings one greater courage to be truthful, regardless of what those who do not understand may think or say. Lest I be understood, I wish here to state most emphatically that I still regard my cabinet meetings as being purely imaginary, but I feel entitled to suggest that while the members of my cabinet may be purely fictional, and the meetings exist only in my own imagination, they have led me into glorious paths of adventure, rekindled an appreciation of true greatness, encouraged creative endeavor, and emboldened the expression of honest thought. Somewhere in the cell structure of the brain is located an organ which receives vibrations of thought ordinarily called hunches. So far, science has not discovered where this organ of the sixth sense is located, but this is not important. The fact remains that human beings do receive accurate knowledge through sources other than the physical senses. Such knowledge, generally, is received when the mind is under the influence of extraordinary stimulation. Any emergency which arouses the emotions and causes the heart to beat more rapidly than normal may, and generally does, bring the sixth sense into action. Anyone who has experienced a near accident while driving knows that on such occasions, the sixth sense often comes to one's rescue and aids by split seconds in avoiding the accident. These facts are mentioned preliminary to a statement of fact which I shall now make. Namely, that during my meetings with the invisible counselors, I find my mind most receptive to ideas, thoughts, knowledge which reach me through the sixth sense. I can truthfully say that I owe entirely to my invisible counselors full credit for such ideas, facts, or knowledge as I received through inspiration. On scores of occasions when I have faced emergencies, some of them so grave that my life was in jeopardy, I have been miraculously guided past these difficulties through the influence of my invisible counselors. My original purpose in conducting council meetings with imaginary beings was solely that of impressing my own subconscious mind through the principle of autosuggestion with certain characteristics which I desired to acquire. In more recent years, my experimentation has taken on an entirely different trend. I now go to my imaginary counselors with every difficult problem which confronts me and my clients. The results are often astonishing, although I do not depend entirely on this form of counsel. You, of course, have recognized that this chapter covers a subject with which a majority of people are not familiar. The sixth sense is a subject that will be of great interest and benefit to the person whose aim it is to accumulate vast wealth, but it need not claim the attention of those whose desires are more modest. Henry Ford undoubtedly understands and makes practical use of the sixth sense. His vast business and financial operations make it necessary for him to understand and use this principle. The late Thomas Edison understood and used the sixth sense in connection with the development of inventions, especially those involving basic patents, in connection with which he had no human experience and no accumulated knowledge to guide him, as was the case while he was working on the talking machine and the moving picture machine. Nearly all great leaders, such as Napoleon, Bismarck, Joan of Arc, Christ, Buddha, Confucius, and Muhammad, understood and probably made use of the sixth sense almost continuously. The major portion of their greatness consisted of their knowledge of this principle. The sixth sense is not something that one can take off and put on at will. Ability to use this great power comes slowly through application of the other principles outlined in this book. Seldom does any individual come into workable knowledge of the sixth sense before the age of 40. More often, the knowledge is not available until one is well past 50, and this for the reason that the spiritual forces with which the sixth sense is so closely related do not mature and become usable except through years of meditation, self-examination, serious thought. No matter who you are or what may have been your purpose in reading this book, you can profit by it without understanding the principle described in this chapter. This is especially true if your major purpose is that of accumulation of money or other material things. The chapter on the sixth sense was included because the book is designed for the purpose of presenting a complete philosophy by which individuals may unerringly guide themselves in attaining whatever they ask of life. The starting point of all achievement is desire. The finishing point is that brand of knowledge which leads to understanding of self, understanding of others, understanding of the laws of nature, recognition and understanding of happiness. This sort of understanding comes in its fullness only through familiarity with and use of the principle of the sixth sense. Hence, that principle had to be included as a part of this philosophy for the benefit of those who demand more than money. Having read the chapter, you must have observed that while reading it, you were lifted to a high level of mental stimulation. Splendid! Come back to this again a month from now, read it once more, and observe that your mind will soar to a still higher level of stimulation. Repeat this experience from time to time, giving no concern as to how much or how little you learn at the time. And eventually, you will find yourself in possession of a power that will enable you to throw off discouragement, master fear, overcome procrastination, draw freely upon your imagination. Then you will have felt the touch of that unknown something, which has been the moving spirit of every truly great thinker, leader, artist, musician, writer, statesman. Then you will be in a position to transmute your desires into their physical or financial counterpart as easily as you may lay down and quit at the first sign of opposition. Faith versus fear. Previous chapters have described how to develop faith through autosuggestion, desire, and the subconscious. The next chapter presents detailed instructions for the mastery of fear. Here will be found a full description of the 6 fears which are the cause of all discouragement, timidity, procrastination, indifference, indecision, and the lack of ambition, self-reliance, initiative, self-control, and enthusiasm. Search yourself carefully as you study these 6 enemies, as they may exist only in your subconscious mind, where their presence will be hard to detect. Remember, too, as you analyze the 6 ghosts of fear, that they are nothing but ghosts because they exist only in one's mind. Remember also that ghosts, creations of uncontrolled imagination, have caused most of the damage people have done to their own minds. Therefore, ghosts can be as dangerous as if they walked and lived on the earth in physical bodies. The ghost of the fear of poverty, which seized the minds of millions of people in 1929, was so real, it caused the worst business depression this country has ever known. Moreover, this particular ghost still frightens some of us out of our wits. That's a heck of a chapter. And I just now realized that that last bit, faith versus fear, was actually a good intro into the next chapter that we'll be tackling tomorrow. My apologies if it throws us off track. And let's begin our discussion. What do you think? Oh, Brian, find it interesting that his cabinet included Baruch Spinoza. He was amazing, and someone Einstein followed, but it is never mentioned. Oh, incredible person in history, much overlooked. Well, with your endorsement, as the fact that I also read it in the book and the others, I shall be looking up Baruch. I'm assuming it's named Baruch Spinoza. Good morning, Monty. Good to see you. Dina, I think it's okay you didn't hear from the very beginning. It was awkward reading it. May I admit freely to you that as I read it, what was going through my mind was, this is somebody who got to a point where I really don't care what you think about me. I mean, trust me, this is a story. His description of these characters becoming so real that he was unnerved and uncertain if the experience was real or not. Is he really seeing Napoleon or Lincoln, at his bedside, the visitation of ghosts, that sort of thing. And I'm thinking to myself, as I'm reading this, yes, I admitted it last week, so I can do it again. This is really verging on hippy dippy woo woo. Verging. And the second thing that hit me was that saying that there's a fine line between genius and crazy. And I think we're beginning to understand why. So to take an experience like that, his counsel, and put it to paper, I would think for him at that point when he was doing it, wasn't that difficult because it was so real to him in his own experience. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking what he is telling me, his experience, that I'm taking it and I'm applying it to my own experiences. My concern throughout my entire life has been, if I go that deep for too long, will I be able to get out? So I can go that deep. I'm not going to share with you in the detail that he shared. My imagination, I have no problem focusing on something so much that it truly is real. And yes, Monty, speaking to energy, power the mindset, harness the unknown, apply it to the known. Because there's far more. Yes, there is far more. And that's what he's saying. He's saying develop that sixth sense. And it's an experience, and there's multiple experiences that I've had. I have, in general, a pretty well-tuned sixth sense in some cases, not on purpose. Some of it based on previous experience that says awareness really will save my butt. The surprise that says that it was subconscious that moved me out of the way. Those coincidences that happen. So rather than delving into the sharing of those types of experiences, so my first question to everybody is, do you believe it's possible for yourself? Have you had that kind of experience? Do you have something you can tap into that vivid, that you can tap into for guidance? Okay, so Brian, Einstein was asked his opinion on God versus evolution. God does not play with play dice with the universe. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll be looking up Spinoza. I'm not familiar with him. I just can't know everything, people. I'm telling you, I just can't. And Dina, yes, his use of the word ghost is not the best choice, but I think it also depends on the times when it was written. We know so much more today, and yet we know so little, right? So this is what I did. I want to share with everybody that after Friday's reading, everybody knows that I had this committee in my head. This is why I resonate with this story. He said, I've got this committee in my head. And that wasn't that long ago that when challenges were presented to me, the committee that came into play and literally would talk me out of doing a challenge or moving through it or getting through a fear were all those people that had made comments or had an impact, had a negative, they just had an impact on my life. And I selected those pieces and parts of them, okay? And they were the committee that came into session. So I replaced them, and I did it on a conscious level. And I fired them, and I replaced them with people that I could easily name. That was the interesting part. I could easily name these people. Yeah, that's why I'm always learning. Constant quest for learning, Brian. I can't know everything. So after naming every one of them, I literally replaced them. And I've got to tell you, this worked. It took some practice. It took some role playing. It took a little activity and an exercise on my part, but it worked. So that when I've been presented with a challenge or a fear or something that the previous committee would jump into, these people have been jumping in. And what they've been doing is they form around this conference table, and I can visualize it, right? I can see it in my imagination. And they say, well, Charlene, so why do you think you're going to be doing this? Why are you so afraid? There's no reason for you to be afraid. Look at some of your past accomplishments. Look at what you've been able to do to this point, things like that. And it's, I'll tell you what, because of that, I have an appointment with an international publishing company. And now this is interesting to me. It's not to publish my book. It is to hire my agency, which I thought was pretty cool. Trust me, a year or two ago, I would have said, I'm not sure we can do that. Even though knowing we can wasn't a problem this time. So anyway, so moving forward, last Friday we read about Napoleon Hill's experience of identifying characteristics of each of the people that he wants to be like. He wants those pieces of them to make himself better. And I got to thinking, why don't I do that with these people I put into my committee? And so I did. And there it is. Okay, just so you know, I named them and I declared what I want to acquire from them. And it was one of the best exercises I've ever been through, because what it did was it made them more real in my mind. And it also helped me to really be clear as to why. Why are you on this committee? It's not just because you say nice things to me. It's not just because you're encouraging, you're my little cheerleader. It's much more than that. There's something there, right? That I want you as a part of my life. And I was able to identify it. And now everybody on here, I knew personally, and blue ink, and it was written in non-cursive. But I know everybody. Okay, and I know them all. Some are dead. And some are not. Matter of fact, I'm meeting one today at 4:00, and then I meet with one regularly. I mean, we've been good friends for quite a few years. And then, let's see, 2 of them are dead, just glancing at the list. But I'm already deciding, based on what we just read, that I'm going to flesh them out just a little bit more, and I'm going to add a couple more people. And it becomes a part of my nightly meditation, if you will. A reminder of this is what I want to be. Because really that's what it boils down to. The things that I've identified out of those people that I admire, they're all a part of how I'm trying to improve in myself. And so that's what I'm taking out of the reading. I'd love to hear what you're taking out of the reading, if it meant anything to you, if it just went like a lead balloon, which I understand when somebody's actually verbalizing those kind of experiences. It's difficult because they're so personal. So personal, it's difficult for me to relate or have something really resonate with me. So come on in and share your thoughts. Could be high level. It could be, this is not going to work for me. Instead, I'm going to take this, that, or the other. And that's fine. That's fine. That's what this is about. Listen, I had the nerve to talk about hippy dippy woo woo, right?
Hippy dippy woo woo.
Yeah, I know.
I'll share a couple of things. I like the part on toward the end where he says that he's using the sixth sense to understand the laws of nature, just sort of understand how things work. That brand of knowledge, which leads to understanding. To learn is to become closer to nature, and yeah, I do think it has a lot to do with just being present and paying attention for the sixth sense. I don't know how much it has to do with the mind. He definitely Napoleon Hill focuses a lot on desire and the mind, and I do think that you're right that like line about insanity and genius is so slim because he's imagining. But if it keeps his priorities in his awareness, like if it keeps those things in his awareness and foresight, and he maintains them, then it works. I mean,
it does, but also the disclaimer, which I found interesting, and I think Dina is trying to enforce with me, is that he's very aware that this is an imaginary council. Yeah. Even when he sees them, when he can visualize their activity, he's also very aware that it is imaginary, which is about the time when I thought, and there's that fine line.
I've had moments where like you have dreams and then you wake up and you're like, wow, I remember like every single detail of that dream. That's real. And then or sometimes in dreams where you're like, okay, this isn't real. But I've had dreams where I'm like in the middle of high school or college and I'm talking to somebody and then I wake up and I went, that was a dream? No.
Oh yeah, it happens. And that's why I'm okay with what he's talking about. It felt a little awkward reading it because it is so personal, and and I have a tendency to want it to be my experience, and yet it's not, right? So I've had experiences like that. I don't have any problem with that. That's how vivid my imagination can be. And again, Dina, I appreciate that you were trying to say, it doesn't matter how deep you go, it doesn't mean you can't come out. You said that earlier, and I appreciate that. But that is a concern. And that's because of the way I work and the way I approach things. I want to learn how to maintain the knowledge that it's imaginary. Hi, Dina. So good to have you with us.
Good morning. Thank you. Good to see you again. It's always fun to participate in your blabs. I have work to do, but it's a temptation to take part because the subjects are really of my interest. So yeah, I didn't hear the passage from the beginning, and I don't remember exactly how he has worded it, but these invisible counselors, well, if did he say that they're imaginary?
Yes.
Because I think if he said imaginary to cover his beep, because if he was going too spiritual, too metaphysical, it wouldn't be accepted by everybody. And for him, something that I do as well, it's more important to find a way to speak a common language with people that they can relate and doesn't create fear or distrust or discomfort in any way. Because some people, if you start speaking them about, we talked about this before, this woo-woo stuff, or too spiritual stuff, or too metaphysical
I admit, it was my word, it's my word, and
they get panicked.
So let me tell you, you come to me with a vacuous smile telling me about the council meeting from this morning, I'm going to walk away.
See ya.
So, but I'm open to learning. I'm open to learning. You also know that I've got a little bit that I can grow with. So go ahead. Thank you, Dina.
Oh, no, plenty. But I think you are open. But I guess, we tend to be cautious. Why are we cautious? We are cautious out of fear. What are we afraid? We are afraid of the unknown. We are afraid of the possible dangers. We are afraid that maybe the beliefs that we have been holding for so long might just simply shaken up, and we are forced to change, and change is painful. What are we afraid? I mean, why are we afraid of the spiritual and metaphysical things? What can possibly happen? It's like, for instance, you are thinking if you go too deep, right, you might not be able to come back. So there are some theories of that sort. Yes, if you have some mental issues, psychiatric issues, and you dive into this kind of brain imbalances, then it's difficult to come out. But we're not talking about these things. We are talking about diving deep into a part of you which exists, and you just become more aware of it. It doesn't mean which is not there. And something which you are, and something which exists, it cannot be danger to you. So that's one of the points that I wanted to make. The other point I was trying to make before, you're welcome. I'm glad you do. The other point is that the imaginary thing, that what he used is to cover and be able to be more approachable to more people. Now, yes, it can be imaginary, but again, what is imaginary? If it's part of your personal experience, if you feel it, if you hear it, if you sense it, if you see it, it's real for you. But I'll dare, and hopefully the people who are present here, perhaps just keep an open mind that maybe are not necessarily, don't have to be necessarily imaginary. Because like your group, you know, your how you call it, your council,
my committee,
your committee, right?
Right.
You say that they are people that you know. So we're not talking about necessarily, you know, what we call ascended masters, archangels, and all kind of that sort. But they are people who either existing or have existed, and they have consciousness. I don't know if I can't talk and see the comments, so you monitor that for me, Shirley.
That's not a problem.
They have consciousness, they have energy, right? Either they crossed over or they're alive. What you're bringing in is their energetic imprint of who they are, and this is real. This is not imaginary. Of course, we say imaginary because we don't have it in, you know,
it's not in three-dimensional form. There's no three-dimensional form to grasp to
we can't like
state,
we sort of
what is real, what is not.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So they're not really imaginary.
Okay, Matt. Thank you so much for coming, dear. It's good to see you. Good stuff.
Hi, Matt. Good to see you. You're welcome.
So yes, I don't have, as you see, Dina, I don't have a problem with metaphysical. It's. Oh,
I know you don't, because I heard you before. We talked about it before.
Yeah. It's the.
So what worries you?
Oh, well, because I have had issues. So I have to be careful. I don't feel the luxury of being able to explore without guidance. So that's why, left to my own devices,
it makes sense.
So
that makes sense.
That's where I come in with it. What I'm talking about is I'm willing, and I've delved into this, but again, with guidance. Can't do it by myself. This is something that isn't a good thing for Charlene to do. So I know that, and there's where my caution comes into play.
I'm here for you, Charlene. We can talk
you,
more about that. With the guidance that you want, I'm welcome to.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
There's Ron. Ron, what are you doing in the car? Don't you dare look at me while you're driving. You do not blab and drive, Ron.
Oh, I can't.
I will not look at you, but I just have one comment that I need to make, and then I will be exiting. And I've been driving for almost 4 hours. On Monday mornings, I do that sometime because I come from my other home. So anyway, as I was listening, I think I look at this as a little bit more practical from a perspective of the way that, I know the way that I look at this is my committee it helps me to get from within just within myself and being self-centered. It's more about what would they do? How would they think through the process of whatever it is that's going on in my life? And then not only is it how would they think about it, but then what activities would they do? And so I think having those people on your committee, whoever they may be, are a good thing. And I just don't see anything mystical about it at all. I just see it, again, from a practical standpoint. So yes, I am driving. I'm going to go ahead and get off from this, but I just thought I'd make a comment.
I'm so glad you did, Ron, because that is actually what I often do when I'm presented with something I'm not familiar with, or, how would Christy handle this? Those are my little get through the day kind of things, especially those of you that know I have social anxiety issues. So I walk into a room, I prep myself, I do everything I can, got my pre whatever, pre-speech, pre-workshop, whatever it is that I can do. And what I often do will draw on what would Christy do? What would Sandy do? What would, there's somebody in my mind that I can draw on to say, what would they do? So I get that part. I'm talking about the laying quietly and having this as part of meditation. And that's what Napoleon Hill was doing to really develop that sixth sense so that it became such a part of him that it was very, very real to him. And so that to me is just a higher level of what Ron was sharing. I may be wrong. What do you think, Dina?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like it's coming up to what you were saying before. Right now, as you as Charlene or me as Dina, how much can I take of a specific things? How much can I handle in terms of the information I'm receiving? I'm trying to find an example. Well, if you were to talk to me about channeling, for instance, which is very similar to today's topic,
Thank you. That's the word that wasn't coming to mind. Yes, that's what I was thinking. Go ahead.
Right. If you were to tell me about this thing maybe 30 years back, I would have some serious issues to comprehend or accept. So when I feel that emotional overload from a specific information, and I say, I'm out. Right? That time wasn't the right time for me, because my belief system at that time, my development, my knowledge at that time could not handle that kind of piece of information. And I think that happens to a lot of people. I was talking to a lady some time back who is a high caliber sales trainer. So her job is on sales and selling and training in big corporations around the world. So we had a conversation. We were in the same mastermind group. So it, of course, came into the spiritual aspects. And she was telling me that she was having visitations from people that had crossed over. And of course, she panicked. And she was panicking every time this would happen. And she didn't want it. She didn't ask for it. And of course, I'm not talking about a person who is involved in metaphysics or spirituality at all, right? But she was having this kind of experience. So she was chatting to me about this. So she didn't want it. She was scared. and every time it would happen, she would just push it away. So she was having people that had crossed over, some people that she would know, some people that she wouldn't know, just appear next to her bedside. And she was finding a very hard time to accept her experience.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we are not ready to accept something because of fear of the unknown. We don't know what we are dealing. We don't know the consequences. We keep on seeing all these. Are you in the UK, Shirley?
No, I'm in the U.S.
You're in the US. So here in the UK, the metaphysical more than the spiritual, and with ghosts and haunted and all that is quite big. And it's in America as well, but I think here is a bit more, it's bigger. So, we hear things and we watch things, or ghosts and haunted and all these bad things, and of course it creates fear in people. I mean, I have personally spiritual encounters, but I don't have experiences of the sort that they are talking about it. So again, it's like what it is in your vibration, what it is in your energy field, this is what you attract. If you're afraid of ghosts, so like ghosts, and you're having that fear will attract
Right.
ghosts to you. I don't have any such fear. I don't really, well, I have my own concept about what ghosts are, and definitely ghosts have nothing. That's why I said he didn't use the right word, ghosts,
Yeah.
because ghosts to me is a lower vibration energies, entities, and you don't want to deal that. You want to deal with higher consciousness entities, either they're alive or not alive. Either they have been in human bodies or they have not been in human bodies. So yes, the unknown and whatever we hear makes us afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Plus we have the church, or the religion, I would say, which brings us up with specific things, that all these things are not good and blah, blah, blah. So now I won't go too much into that, but that's why we have these limitations, and we are not open to greater experiences.
Okay. Well,
I mean,
see, he even says in here, though, that he hesitated to even write this out. He hesitated because the sixth sense is something that can be nurtured and developed. And that what I find interesting, of course, he says that you can ignore this chapter. If it's too much, if you just can't deal with it, if it doesn't make sense to you, feel free, ignore this chapter. But I can't, because he also notes in his own experience when he talked to Ford about that experience of, we had this meeting, my dream, we had this meeting, Ford got it. So that tells me that there's many, many others who have reached a level of being, who are able to tap into those experiences, not be afraid of them, and have them be a positive impact on them growing, being better. And the side effect in some cases is that they had more money. But the focus wasn't to have that sixth sense to get more money. It was to be better and to grow as a human being.
Exactly. It's just you tap in your inner wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
in the broader sense of who you have been eternally, and you tap into the wisdom of the universe, which is the soup of the wisdom of everybody living in this universe.
Right.
So it's a library. There are different words that have been used for this kind of higher consciousness, higher mind. Some Eastern expressions uses the Akash, or the Akashic records, or the Akashic library. But the sixth sense is there for us as a tool for everything. Everything
Yes.
that is connected with us.
And
and of course we have to
I
use it
tap
in business.
into it a lot. It's, as I said, I'm very familiar with it. I trust my instincts. I trust my intuition. I I mean, I've had experiences that my husband is very familiar with, and actually he relies on me. He'll tell me, you go there first and tell me if it's safe for us to be there. You tell me what you think. But and that's the way he puts it, but he knows he's asking me, do I have a sense that this is a bad spot? This is a bad place, so it's there. I think what intrigues me is that I've never used it as it relates to my business. But I also have to realize that, and I want to share this, it was a recent revelation to myself, right? In self-exploration and examination over the past years, finally recognizing and admitting the fact that I never really associated myself as the business. It was always, I've only come out as Charlene Burke is the one that the businesses follow. Up until 2014, it was always, here's the business, Charlene happens to be a part of it. So that flip has been quite an experience. And it's, of course, based on my growth and how I'm developing, which is why I'm reading this book, why I explore where I explore, right? Where I share what I share, because it all is associated with me, which is my business. And I just find it interesting that I'm aware of the sixth sense. I trust it. I've tapped into it many times over the years. It's saved my butt many times on a very personal level. It has opened doors for me on other things. I've gotten those flashes, but I never tapped into it for the purpose of growing myself so that the business could grow. I'm very, as you can see, I'm very compartmentalized. That's how I work. I got little rooms that each piece of me sits in, and I tap into those, and I'm going to work on this right now, and I'm going to look at it this way right now. And I know it's very focused and very narrow. I'm working with what I got. So just,
Well, there is a right time for everything, and everything happens step by step. Our growth is step by step. I mean, if I sit and tell you my story, maybe we can have a virtual coffee meeting, or we can share my story. You will see that where I was and where I am, and I'm sure there's a lot more for me to learn and grow. But I had to separate the business aspect of me and the spiritual aspect of me for a very long time. I even had to separate businesses to satisfy both aspects, till I finally said, it
really is all me.
This is me, and I too, and whoever is open to both, to who I am, these are the kind of people I want to also attract. So using intuition business is very much part of what I teach, or I coach my clients to use themselves, or I use my own intuition to help them. Because what happens, unfortunately, we all have the sixth sense. Where we differentiate is that we have not all developed it at this specific point of our lives equally. And it can be learned like anything else. With practice, you can develop it. But when it comes to ourselves sometimes, and I'm sure you will agree in that, we can't always have that clarity of vision. And the reason for that is we have internal interferences of our own personal desires, expectations, fears, and limiting beliefs that as a veil comes in front of us, and we can't clearly tap into the inner wisdom of ourselves. And this is where sometimes we need someone else to help us see things that we cannot clearly see. I mean, the same with coaching, isn't it? That's why even coaches need to have coaches. Like a coach needs to have a coach, because we know how to coach other people, but when it comes to ourselves, we just can't clearly see things. Somebody wrote a long thing.
Yeah, Brian. Forced by society to determined by normal. Your normal is defined by experience. Sixth sense is something guided by our own experience alone, and based upon those experiences, we are guided to make decisions. Yes. One of my favorite musicians, Charlie Peacock. You can only possess what you experience. Truth to be understood must be lived. I experience my belief, therefore I possess it. Beautifully said, Brian. Beautifully said.
Yeah.
The sixth sense is the spiritual realm. I know that. I tap into it. And it is, some of it's based on my experience, but others is when there have been times over my life where I've relaxed and just been waiting for the answer. And I'm struck with the answer. But developing it for the purpose is what I'm stumbling on. Developing it for as it relates to my business, which is as it relates to me to be better so that my business is better, is where I was stumbling. And I think I'm starting on it when I've got that list of people, right? And I flesh them out, my committee members. I flesh them out, and I'm going to have, instead of just calling on them as a committee to convene or them showing up because I'm facing something I need their help with, I'm going to delve a little deeper and have actual conscious conversation, or dialogue is a better word, conscious dialogue, to make use of who I know they are and what they can bring to me.
See, one thing is that trying and dig into their inner wisdom, let me put it this way. But the other thing is to ask them your question. It's basically you're tapping into your own wisdom as well. But it's like pretending having your own on-demand personal coach, business coach, or life coach right that moment, and you want to ask that question. Then instead of, you're not asking into a physical person, you are asking on your committee or one member of your committee. So either you do that as an imaginary act or as a real thing. It doesn't matter, really, how you experience it, because the experience is real for you in any case. And then you put the question and you just wait for the answer. And it will come in a variety of, I'm doing a little bit of coaching there about tapping into your intuition. I hope that's okay.
I don't have any problem with it. I'm grateful that you're willing to share.
No problem. Yeah, my pleasure. So it will come in a variety of ways. Sometimes we expect us to hear things. And let me define the hear thing. It's not that your physical ears are going to actually listen to something.
Right.
Is basically it will come in a form of your own thoughts, as if you're getting the information.
Either that or a vision. It'll actually be an image.
So the second thing is that an image will appear that you will need to again translate with your own intellect. It can come as a sensation, something that you feel, or like this feels right, this feels wrong, sort of a thing. But it could be a physical sensation as well. But it could be something odd happening. It could be, the answer, first of all, doesn't always necessarily happen immediately. Okay. There were examples, for instance, let's say you are driving. Okay. And as you drive, your eye falls on a billboard.
Right.
And then something is on that billboard. It's just, it gives you like the light bulb. Wow, this is connected to my question. You're getting an answer like this. Or a book falls down.
That's because I'm open to the answer.
Yes.
I've asked the question, so I'm open to the answer. And I'm hearing you say that we need to be aware that the answer isn't going to come as just oftentimes happens in a moment of meditation where the thought strikes. I get struck with the answer. But it can come with an experience outside of myself. Conversation with somebody, a book title, driving down the road, seeing something off in the distance, hearing something on the radio, hearing something in a conversation next to me in a group, something like that, where suddenly it hits, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because I got that. That's what I mean by trusting my instinct and intuition, is that there are many times I can recall that moment when that's it. It makes no sense to you whatsoever over here, but it does to me because the association has been made. But I also understand that up until that point, I have been open to experiences or sensory input that has built up to the point of my being able to recognize that one piece that, to me, it's like a puzzle, that one piece that came in and boom, I've been struck with the answer. So it's not just the one, it's being open to it. It's asking for guidance. It's and being specific about it. So I'm going to go back to those people on my committee that I have fleshed out. And that's what I was talking about, making use of it for my business because it is growing me. And there's things about these people that that I'm attracted to, that I admire, that I really want to improve in myself. But there's a few things in there that I've listed. The reason why I'm around them is because they know how to make money and they know how to manage money. So I have to bring that in for my purposes to say it out loud, that that's one of the reasons why I have them in my life, is so that I can learn and I can be better for it. But it's not just the money. That's why I liked what Napoleon Hill wrote, is that if you're going to do this to, develop your sixth sense just for the attainment of money and wealth, there's no point in it, because it is so closely tied with the spiritual realm that you better be prepared for improving yourself along the way. It's kind of the way I read that.
I don't think professional growth or business growth can really take place without the personal growth.
I'm learning that.
Because especially solopreneurs, we are, as you said before, we are the business.
Yes.
We are the business. Without us, there is no business. So if we do not develop as people, we cannot develop as business.
Correct.
Money is, of course, the ultimate aim.
But that's what happened to me last year. I'd been in business since 2008, and I was doing okay, but it needed to be more. I needed to be more. And I began recognizing that which I was doing for me to improve was adding skill sets, developing those talents and what have you that I already had. But it needed to go bigger. It needed to be more for me to reach the levels that I want to reach. And that's where that switch had to happen. And the recognition that it has to be me that makes all these changes. Yeah, I know, Cindy. See, those are the things I learned, dear. So I'm going to say hi to everybody. Sorry about that. I didn't welcome you as you came in. Don and Gerald. Gerald, you gave me props. You know I love props. So good to have you here. And then we have, let's see here. I've missed a couple of people. I'm sorry. Ian, you're still with us. So glad of that. Good to see you. Ken Gordon, glad you're here. Roy Montero, glad you're in here with us. And Blog Aid. And then we're getting a whole slew of people. Well, hello. All right. So here's the deal. You can come into the room if you want to talk about Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, His Invisible Counselors, and the sixth sense or development thereof. That we are talking about tapping into the spiritual realm, higher levels of vibration. What else are we talking about here? Dina?
Yeah, the reality, the how much real or imaginary is the whole experience of having those invisible counselors.
Yeah.
And how we can take advantage of that to develop ourselves and grow our business.
Okay.
Yeah, basically
Thank
intuition,
you.
how to develop intuition.
There you go. Said it better than I could. I appreciate that, Dina. Hello, Roy. Welcome.
Hey, Charlene. Hi, Dina. Good morning.
Hi, Roy.
Yeah, earlier you were talking about that the answer you seek doesn't always come during your meditation. It can come days or weeks later, and through other people or through circumstances. And that's been a part of your life that you kind of come to rely on, Charlene. I think that's what I heard you say. I too believe exactly as you do when it comes to meditation and prayer, that if the answer doesn't come right away, then it's going to come. And you need to be on the lookout through other people, through circumstances, because that's where it's going to lie if it doesn't come right away. I mean, that's only logical to me. Is that how you came to that conclusion as well?
Well, yeah, many, many, many years ago, it was taught to me that God answers prayers. Yes, no, maybe, and wait.
Exactly, and it's the wait one that kills us.
You know, I was a late teenager. In my late teens, I was taught this, that there's power in prayer, and I saw the positive impact of prayer. I saw things happen because of prayer, but I was also cautioned that when I pray, I will get an answer. Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no, sometimes it's maybe, which means you got to wait. And then I was taught how to be open to recognizing the answers as they came, which really is a skill. Really took me a long time.
Yes.
You know, the old story, there's that old biblical related story. Okay, it's not biblical, but there's an old story that, you know, the flood came and the man was on the porch.
Yeah, he kept saying, no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He ends up on the roof after he's got the rowboat, the power boat, and then the helicopter all come by to pick him up. And he's all praying all the while for God to save him. He dies, goes to heaven. He meets with God and says, God, I just don't understand why you let this happen. And God says, good Lord, man, I gave you 3 tries, sent 3 people to you. I answered your prayer. You just didn't recognize it as the answer.
Yeah. This is a good example.
I mean, and I learned that not even 40 years ago. I was in my teens.
That example, Charlene, fits right in for me personally with what I see here on Blab. This is my promised land. If we're talking about biblical things right now, then promised land this is, because what I'm learning is that the people that are crossing my path here and the people that are not crossing my path here is a blessing. I heard a long time ago that if when God brings a person into your life, he wants to protect you. Excuse me, he wants to help you. I blew it. He wants to help you. This is for your help. When people come into your life, he wants to help you. And when God takes a person out of your life, he wants to protect you. And I've lived with that for a long time, and it makes a lot of sense, because some people have a reason or a lifetime, and we have to be able to sort that out. And I think we can do it at lightning speed, at the sound of speed, at the speed of sound here on Blab.
There you go. Knew you were going to get
it. I am just waking up. It is 6:05 a.m. here, and I thank you for this. But
well, actually, I think you've got an excellent point, Roy, and that's what Napoleon Hill is trying to, I think, convey, is that we can hone that 6th sense so that we can retrieve it as needed. We can call on that guidance as needed, call on the answer, and receive it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's something I think that I know in my case, it's not well developed. It's just acknowledgement that it's always been there. I've not used it on a regular basis. And that's where I'm starting to grow myself here. Doing this during Talking with Dina, I'm realizing that I can begin purposefully using it and developing it and growing it as a way to call in the help right now.
I love it. So I do the same, and here's how I do what I do here on Blab, and I'm equating it to Blab. So I say, Lord, is this person supposed to be in my life? Very simply, and I expect an answer. And I just wait and go with the flow, right? I don't force ripe anything, like my friend Christine likes to say. She doesn't force ripe anything. She comes from Jamaica. They force ripe their fruit over there. Did you know that? Anyway, I don't want to force ripe mine. Yeah, I don't want to force ripe my friendships here. I don't want to force ripe my business relationships here. I don't want to force ripe anything. I just want it to flow. So I love this place, right? You just jump in and out of people's hangs or blabs. And a lot of people just resonate with you right away. It's not, you don't have to force that relationship. You just know. So those are the ones I take, and I attempt to nurture them a little bit more, develop them a little bit more, and see where they're going to go. But I want to do it fast because I don't want to wait a year to figure out, oh, you're not supposed to be in my life, or I just wasted this whole entire year because I didn't know the right questions to ask or the right feelings to have. Charlene, do you follow what I'm saying? And Dina, you too. Are you following what I'm saying? Because now I'm quitting.
Yeah, but let me just say that there is no wrongness to anything, because maybe if there has been an original attraction with somebody, you say you didn't have to wait for a year. But because after a year, a connection or relationship has proven to be not a good one or not a beneficial one in terms of positivity or the things you would have liked, doesn't mean that this specific relationship or connection was not important for your personal development or even business development. Do you see my point on this? That
sure
maybe the connection was there
saying,
because there was something that you need.
Are you?
Maybe the connection was there because you needed to learn something, and this connection was there to help you grow even further, even if it wasn't externally of your best interest.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow. So Charlene, if you got what I'm getting, help me out. So I said that I can separate the people who I connect with immediately versus those that are looks like a force ripe type of relationship. So I'm putting,
or it's a struggle. If there's struggle for us to have a conversation or dialogue here on Blab, if it's work, I honestly, I'm just going to leave it be. But but that's on Blab. That's the initial.
That's what I'm talking about.
But it's still, it doesn't mean that I don't value what somebody else is bringing to the table, and I can associate them with them on a different level. So it is, but it's like anything else. I determine who is going to be a part of my inner circle.
Yes,
the
that's
second
what I'm
level,
of, yes.
Who is going to be a part of my life on a regular basis, on occasion.
Exactly.
I think that's what it all.
Exactly. Okay. So I'm not sure if I followed, but is that what you were saying, Dina? That these people can pour into you, but you don't have to have them in your inner circle?
Yeah, I was referring that sometimes to the point of having to wait for a year till you find out that it wasn't right for you. Sometimes we do have an attraction to make a connection, whether it's personal or business, and we say that moment we feel it's right, and then after a year
learn later
we realize it wasn't.
Things have changed, or new information is brought.
So it does.
Right, new information.
Yeah. So basically, to this, I was picking up on this point that sometimes we don't have good experiences, so we said, "Oh, I wish I haven't connected with that person. I wish I haven't done that thing." But sometimes we don't see the broader picture of things, and at the end, a specific relationship that perhaps was not a very good experience for us, we can see it as a good experience for us because we have learned, if we allowed it, something from that, even if it was for the sake, I don't want to be relating with this kind of people, right? So even just for the sake of that learning. I was just picking up on a very specific point. I understand, I think, what you're saying, Roy. Yes, the quicker you know if you can resonate a person or not, the better. But I think we again, it's intuitive thing, right? I can tell immediately if I resonate with Charlene or not.
Correct.
Well, if I wasn't resonating, I wouldn't be on our Blab right now, right? So I go to some other Blabs, for instance, and maybe there is a good content, but I just see the person and the way the person talks. I mean, I have an example just recently. I was interested in the topic very much, and I go on that Blab and I watch it for a while, and perhaps the person has very valuable, very knowledgeable person information, but I just could not resonate with the way she was talking or the way she was providing the information. I found it a bit.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. So
then I said,
know the
okay, I
answer.
don't resonate with you.
Okay, so I know the answer right away for me. That person does not belong in my life, period. Now, what
No.
about...
Exactly.
Okay, so hold on. I'm
Okay.
past the top of the hour. I have to close the recording because those who watch the replay, and I do have them, which is awesome, want to be conscious of the fact that I try to keep it to the 1 hour. So hang tight while I close out the recording portion. I'll keep the room open for another 30 minutes or so, okay? So this is Charlene Burke. Thank you for joining me on Morning Mindset Cafe, where we talked about Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, specifically about the invisible counselors, drawing on that sixth sense, nurturing it, delving into the spiritual realm to grow it. So go to growbecauseyouknow.com, www.growbecauseyouknow.com. Let's move forward with the day on purpose, with purpose, to grow our hearts, grow our minds, and grow our businesses. Until next time.